Inspiration for Teachers podcast, bringing you dynamic and inspirational educator interviews. Our fascinating guests share their professional challenges and creative resolutions for success. Discover their workable strategies, ideas, and resources to reach your educational goals. And now your host, Kelly Long.
Welcome to another episode of Inspiration for Teachers. I'm your host, Kelly Long, and I have an exciting educator on the show with us today. Stefan Caspar is Enhanced Learning Production Manager at the University of Southampton here in the UK. Stefan has a background in media production and in teaching and learning. He has worked for the likes of the BBC and elsewhere in secondary and further education before moving to the University of Southampton. His interest is in supporting educators to make the opportunities presented by new technologies to create blended learning. Now we'll delve into that in just a minute and into your educational challenge of encouraging educators to ensure active learning is liberating and rewarding to teach. So I definitely need to know about this, Stefan. But before we dive into that educational challenge, please can you take a moment to say hi to our listeners and fill in any blanks from the intro?
Okay, well, it's a real pleasure to be here and to do this and to have this kind of conversation. And I think it's really exciting. There's more going on like this. You know, I was saying we kind of bumped into each other at Teach Meet, and I think there's more opportunity for educators to kind of share best practice and do things like this. So yeah, I'm very flattered to be asked, and it's very welcome. Got a kind of varied background, and I originally trained as a filmmaker before kind of moving into education, and I kind of moved into informal education and started to make films around teaching and learning, and that really, you know, I sort of got the bug, and I decided to go and get my teacher training qualifications, and there was a local one of the local colleges wanted a media teacher, so I went and did that for sort of one afternoon a week, and then that one afternoon became kind of one day, and then that became 2 days, and then they made me head of department. So
and then you were trapped.
Yeah, I thought I better stay now. That's it. So, and I just found it so rewarding and really enjoyable, and a great bunch of people to be around, and I've sort of continued that, really, and I'm very lucky. I've moved now into a space, into higher education, where I'm much more able to have those sorts of dialogues and meet other educators and talk to them about what they're doing and what they're enjoying, and be inspired by them, you know, that's how, you know, I mean, I'll be honest to say that it's much easier where I sit now than when I was on the coalface, and that was tiring and exhausting. And one of the reasons I definitely made the jump was so that I could have a little bit more time with my young family, and yes, do fun things like jump in the sea at the end of a week, and go out on my bike a little bit more. And it's not to say that the work here at Southampton isn't challenging. It's challenging in a very different way, but I have a different remit, really, and I have the space in which to operate. That's very exciting.
Well, it definitely sounds that, and I'm so glad that you're the guest on the show and you're going to be doing all the talking, because I've been doing a lot of talking this week and my throat is about to break. So I'm glad you're doing it all. What I like to do, Stefan, on the show is I like to give our listeners an immediate knowledge takeaway, and have been asking my most recent guests the same question. I like to dissect what is the most important aspect of teaching and learning, and the most powerful tool, in your opinion, a teacher has in their toolkit to aid learning. So what would you say that is?
That's a really interesting one. Just as a takeaway, I remember very early on, somebody in my teacher training giving me kind of 10 minutes to kind of do a task, and then I completed the task, and then they said I did two things there. You know, I gave you something to work with, and I lied to you, and they'd actually only given me kind of 6 or 7 minutes. And I think it's that power that I think, you know, this is a really awful thing to say, but I think the ability to play the room a little bit, to be an actor, to be a bit of a performer. I think lots of good teachers are able to capture some of that and use that to help the room. I definitely believe teaching is some sort of performance, and you need that aspect in yourself, and you need to be able to, you know, tell a few fibs and blag a little bit and have a bit of fun with your learners, and I think that they respond to that, and they know, and that they enter into a relationship with you as an educator, that they know that this may be slightly different from what you might hold as a person, and I think that's okay.
Yes, you can definitely work the room a bit better when you can do that. So thank you very much for sharing that with us. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to place you in the centre of our educational compass and find out in 60 seconds what really excites you about the teaching profession and what you would most like to change and why.
Okay, blimey. So yeah, I think, like where I am at the moment, it's really, I feel like we're entering a new phase, and I think that, increasingly we're looking at teaching both online and face to face. I mean, everything that's happening with the internet and the sort of digital revolution, I think is vital. It's vital that educators get on board with all of that, and it just provides a huge number of challenges and things that we've got to get our heads around. Our learners are coming with a huge amount of understanding, but then huge gaps in their understanding where it relates to the digital world, and we have to sort of square that. I think we're right at the beginning of this sort of journey, and it provides lots of opportunities for creativity, for reflection, for connecting. That's a key theme, really. And I think as educators, we've got a role to be part of that, to get on board with that, and to learn as much from the people that we interact with, our learners, than we do ourselves, really.
I think that phrase "digital natives" gets bandied around too frequently, and we automatically assume just because these children are involved in technology and they use it all the time that there is the tendency to assume that they know far more than what we do, and sometimes that is the case. But it's nice to have that conversation, that relationship with the kids where you can say, right, you show me something. But I think
Yes.
pushing those boundaries of kind of broadening up the learning opportunities so that we can reach out to other educators in other countries, I think that's really exciting. But have you seen any really good examples of where that opportunity has really been maximised and teachers are doing some really great things online?
Your first point about digital natives is really interesting, because we're often finding that people don't arrive quite with the digital skills that we thought they would have. But it does kind of work twofold. So one of my colleagues, Fiona Harvey here, who's a education manager and who works alongside us, she's been fantastic in terms of putting learners together with educators in terms of bridging the digital divide. So she has student iChamps, and they're really good at both suggesting ideas. So iChamps are really interesting because they go to lecturers with ideas about, you could use this tool or that tool, but they don't have the sort of pedagogic understanding that their educators have. But it takes both parties to start to implement ideas and bring things together in a way that's really fruitful and interesting. And that's happening more and more and more. So we think that's quite a good model for doing other things. So we've also got sort of feedback champs or employability champs. Often what we found was that educators said that they didn't have time, or that they didn't want to use such a sort of digital tool because they thought there wouldn't be any take up from the students. They say the students don't like this. But what's really interesting then is when it's the students that approach it this way and they say, why don't you use, something like Pathbright to create a portfolio, or why don't we just use something else like, to present, like Keynote or whatever. They're starting to introduce tools that the educators would normally have thought, but it's the educators who can think about the value that those tools have in their teaching and learning in that sort of setting. And I think that's been really exciting. That's something that's really starting to get together.
Well, I can definitely relate to that because I asked my year 9s if they were using Snapchat, and of course they're all on it, and I was saying, well, how could we use it in education? They're like, no, miss, you don't use it for educating, you use it for like taking pictures of yourself and sending it to your friends. And they just couldn't get beyond that boundary of, no, we don't use it in any other setting apart from a social setting. So I was really pushing them to to come up with some ideas, and a few of them came up with ideas for homework. So I definitely think you're right, and I really like that student champs thing. That sounds really good.
Yeah, that's been really successful. I mean, there's a really nice example where there's a history lecturer called Eleanor Quince, and she sets these little questions. That she has a module which is about London, and she sets these little kind of quiz questions via Twitter. And then the students answer those questions, so they have to do the research, and they have to, in order to answer those questions. And what we found is that then the conversations that they're having online around those initial questions are really interesting, and it's really sort of connecting each other. And then when they arrive in the lesson, they've already got something that they can sort of talk about that's already stimulated some ideas and some thoughts. So yeah, there's some really cool stuff happening, definitely.
I love extending that learning conversation out of the classroom, and I definitely think Twitter has got so many opportunities. So, Stefan, I know that you're super keen to speak to us about MOOCs, so could you just take us to that moment and explain what research that you have done regarding them? So,
one of the really interesting ways that we're seeing learners connect, especially, as we talk about the difference between informal and learning and formal learning, is in MOOCs. So these are massive open online courses, and here at Southampton, I think we've done 8 or possibly 8 or 9, and these are really helping us to reach out to a very wide audience. So sometimes, in terms of the massive, our MOOCs have sort of tens of thousands, and sometimes they've even reached sort of 80, 90 to sort of 100,000 people, and that presents, as you can imagine, lots of challenges. That's been really interesting, and in particular, what MOOCs are really good at are asking big questions and getting discussion and dialogue going between the learners. So I often judge an activity or a step, if you like, on a MOOC by how much discussion there is. So a step that has lots and lots of discussion means that we've asked the right question, that we've got the learners connecting and chatting to each other, and you can see people from South America talking to people in Eastern Europe. There's people from across the world, from lots of different backgrounds, really interacting, and that's been really exciting. So we've recently finished a MOOC around business and management, and we had chief execs and people working in offices from all over the world interacting and talking to each other, and quite often turning those online discussions into real life discussions and getting together in little groups. So instead of going to a book club, you might go to sort of a MOOC club. So I think there's still a group that meets every Monday morning at the British Library to talk about their online learning and have breakfast. So yeah, there are some really interesting things happening in the world of MOOCs. One of the things that we're taking from that is this idea of connecting learners and thinking about big questions is something we're taking to VLEs, and is something that I've been talking at Teach Meets about. So how you might improve your VLE by not turning it just from something like a resource dump into something that's actually a course with steps and activities and learning checks.
How's the best way for someone thinking about setting one of those up to proceed?
Yeah, that's really interesting. Well, there are lots of different course providers. So at the moment, what we're finding is that it takes it's a huge amount of energy to get these big courses up and running. So all the media that's created around them, all the education that's made out of them, it's been really interesting, because in making MOOCs, I'm really borrowing from my kind of broadcast background. It's often the same setup for me as it would have been making a documentary or something like that. But on a much smaller level, you can think about your own course and how you're presenting that on your VLE, whether that's in Moodle or Blackboard or whatever, or Firefly or Canvas. There's some wonderful things out there, and how you might turn that into not just a whole sort of bunch of resources. You know that phrase, and if you want any further resources, they're all available online. Well, that really should be banned, because what you should find online is the course itself, and that's how you can integrate it and create proper blended learning, where it's important to do all the stuff online and have a good relationship with the things that you'll be doing in class. That you can't do one without the other.
So can I just delve into this a little bit deeper, because I know of MOOCs, but I wouldn't say that I was au fait with them. But what is the key thing to that process? Is it little modules, and then around the modules of learning there are conversations happening?
Yeah, so in MOOCs, the MOOCs are online courses, so from start to finish. Usually they're anything from sort of 2 to 4 to 6 weeks, and each week contains a number of learning steps, and those steps could be an article, a video, it could be a discussion activity, could even be a bit of peer learning and assessment. So each week, all of those steps add up to the completion of a sort of online course.
And do they get a qualification at the end of it?
They don't at the moment. It's informal learning, just as in the same way as something like the Khan Academy or lynda.com, which I heartily recommend. Or nowadays, if you want to know how you want to fix your phone or something, you go to YouTube, right? So this is much more about blurring the lines between informal and formal. The courses are set up by our educators in the same way that they might set up an undergraduate program, but it offers them an opportunity to talk about about subjects in a very specific way, and in a much more open and accessible way. Because what you got to think about when you set up a MOOC is what will my learners do? What interactions will what will my learners offer the course? How will the course be built around them? What sorts of discussions and ideas will they be able to exchange? And that's the really interesting bit for me. So when you do a step, you can call up inline comments. So you don't go elsewhere to a forum to have these discussions. You have them right there on the page next to the video or the article that you're reading, and have those discussions in a much more kind of open and accessible way.
So do you have someone that's the architect, that someone's controlling it each week, or is it a case of people just progress it through it at their own speed?
People do them in the order usually, because we facilitate the courses. So so there's a launch date and a finish date, and during that time there will be people from the university who are there to kind of guide you a little bit and answer some questions, and just keep ideas kind of ticking over. But after that, the course remains open, and you can go and dip in, and in fact you can go and have a look at individual steps. And one of the most exciting things, we have a partnership with the Open University, and they have a platform called Futurelandcom, and one of the most interesting things that they've been doing is that they've been creating open steps. So if you want to know why the sea is salty and you tap that into Google, one of the things that might come up in the search engine is one of the activities from our oceanography course. So what's really interesting about MOOCs is that they're becoming a huge sort of knowledge repository, as it were.
Well, it sounds really exciting, because it sounds like collective and collaborative learning all in one go.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think they're still very young. We've only been doing MOOCs in this country for 2 or 3 years, and they're hugely successful in the US and elsewhere. But they are, I say that they're social learning events, as it were. So they're opportunities for people to come together around a particular theme or subject, and that's what I would like to see people do in their own on their own platforms, really. And I don't actually believe really that you need your own VLE or MOOC platform. You could just as easily use something like WordPress or a blog to have that learning take place. You've just got to get good at asking good questions.
Well, that sounds really exciting, and I think I'm now inspired to go and find one for myself now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you should give it a go. It's people often judge MOOCs and they say, well, not many people complete them. But quite frankly, if you went and you just did a few steps and you found those useful and fun, then that's great.
Excellent. I'm definitely going to go to lynda.com and check one out.
Yeah. So if you want to find out more, I would go to Futurelandcom. and have a look at the courses there. But equally, there are some fantastic providers like Coursera.com and Udacity as well. And there's an aggregator, I think. So there's an aggregator called, which brings all the MOOCs together, and that's called Class Central. So if you go to classcentral.com, you'll see something. There was something for everyone, definitely.
Excellent, Stefan. I'm definitely going to go and check that out and see if I can find some course on avoiding how to get stung by jellyfish.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I've just finished one which is called Childhood in a Digital Age, and as a parent, it was an absolute godsend. It's what I needed right at this moment, you know.
Right, I think I need that as well. But let's just flip back to the other side of that question now, which was, what would you most like to change and why?
It is interesting. I mean, we've talked about kind of, you know, skills already, and I think, you know, for me that's the sort of most important part. And I know that, you know, there's lots of debate in education in terms of the importance of kind of facts, and it was interesting to hear, you know, government to talk about so-called sort of difficult subjects. So I found that really patronising, actually, because, you know, there are lots of people who don't find maths difficult, who don't find history difficult. They find it really enjoyable. You know, lots of people who really love STEM subjects. It makes me think that the minister who said that probably found those subjects difficult, which is why he thinks that we should all be finding those subjects difficult. I think it's about equipping students with the right tools, and this is the feedback that we're getting from employers. So they may have completed their degree, you know, and we know that, you know, there's been sort of education deflation. You know, there are more and more people coming to university, more and more people leaving with degrees. So really, you need some sort of postgraduate qualification to really make your mark, and then even, you know, that MAs will start to depreciate in value, and it will be PhDs and all the rest of it. So perhaps really what we can value hugely, well, what employers value hugely are the skills that students leave with. So, you know, we talk about digital skills, but also things like, you know, creativity, innovation, invention, you know, enterprise, entrepreneurial skills, research skills. Those are things that are really highly sought after in companies. But you know, at the moment, the bit of paper that says, you know, you've got a first class honours in history doesn't quite do justice to all of those other things that that they might pick up along the way. So we're really trying to address this, and we're thinking that things like badges might help. You know, to do this, might help to recognise all those different skills that you learn at university, not just the degree program or the postgraduate program. So badges, portfolios, opportunities to capture some reflective practice around all the clubs and societies, and even, you know, those sorts of things. They're really important, and we need to capture that. I think if you're coming, you need to show you've had an all-round good student experience, and that learning is learning.
Well, it's really interesting that you say that, because we had a speaker for schools in our school just this week. He's a headhunter, and one of the things that he was saying is it's very much okay to have the qualifications, but if you can't show any skills or any richness in your CV in terms of having creativity, innovation, pushing yourself beyond what is, you know, just acceptable in terms of, you know, you've gone to school and you've got your qualifications, just kind of pushing yourself a bit more. He said it's really something that headhunters are looking at. It's not just the fact that you've got a 1-1 in an accountancy degree. They want to see a range of skills, and I definitely agree with you. But for me, I find that quite easy because I teach business, so I'm always doing creativity and innovation. But yeah, I think trying to spread that out across the curriculum a bit more and recognising it with the badges idea, I think that's really, really good.
Creativity for me is one of the key things, because people always associate creativity with the kind of the arts and that, but, you know, I work with some fantastic researchers here, and I see creativity in science, you know, in chemistry. It's the way you approach ideas, and the way you tackle things, and the way you implement creative processes into subject matters. So, you know, I think the engineering group that we have here at Southampton is incredibly creative and innovative. It shouldn't just be down to the arts subjects. It's a skill. I hate hearing people saying I'm not creative. I don't believe that's the case, really.
I agree with you. It's definitely a skill and it definitely can be learnt. So what we're going to do is we're going to shift the focus slightly of our conversation and discuss your thought-provoking ideas with regards to active learning. But just before we do, I just want to remind our listeners that they can find Stefan's show notes page on our website at inspirationforteachers.com. We'll also be tweeting out key themes from the episode via Twitter at inspiration40 and via Stefan's Twitter page, which is
At Dots and Spaces.
So Stefan, let's just go to this journey that you've been on and set the scene for our listeners and describe your professional challenge and some of the solutions you think we need to be thinking about or considering or implementing.
Yeah, I think I said to you, I think that the greatest challenge for me is time. I've got into the habit of every time I go to a conference and I hear this theme come up to sort of write it on a pad, and I've started to notice that I've got little post-it notes and document wallets and things like that I've got the word time and time again and again written on it, and I'm really think that we need to get into this, so what this seems to be the major barrier why people aren't adopting new technologies or bringing active learning into their classrooms, because they don't feel that they have the time. They're only just keeping their heads above water at the moment. How are they going to implement change, because they really haven't got any time to do it in. And I think we've got to tackle this from the top, really. So change has to be led strategically by senior management, and even beyond that. So it has to be pushed forward into the agenda. So I'm really inspired by things like the Feltag report and good people like Bob Harrison who understand change to be a cultural thing. Not just something that you kind of implement overnight, not just sort of a set of rules, as it were. This is the big barrier, and we need to find ways to tackle this. I read a report this week that it takes something between 9 and 500 hours for every hour of online activity in terms of preparation, and it just seemed incredible to me, and I thought, wow, I just feel like I've got to get to the bottom of this and provide more support and guidance for people who want to do it, because something in me tells me that it is moving in the right direction. People are starting to do things, so if some people are finding the time, they must have some magic up their sleeve somewhere.
Well, I definitely think so, because you come up with so many ideas when you're planning and you're thinking about how you're going to teach a lesson, but you're definitely right that the time pressures are so immense. I've never ever, because I've worked in industry, and I've never been in an environment where literally from the second you step into the door, even your journey in the car, from the second you step into your car and you get to work, and it's just flying at you all day until you leave that school environment. So I do think teachers really struggle with, it's not that they don't want to introduce new ideas, it's just that they don't have the time to do it. Have you got any good ideas as to how we could do that?
Yeah, I think planning is a kind of key thing, really. Oh, it sounds really dull answer, doesn't it? But I mean, I did you say to people, before you start opening up the computer, before you start thinking about what app you're going to use, you need to get a good old bit of A4 and a biro out and just look at the direction and start to divide things into sort of doable chunks. Don't try and climb Everest in one go, as it were. There are, no one's ever attempted that. They've always stopped at various camps along the way and taken breath and then look back at what they've achieved so far and being quite happy with that. And it may be that you never quite get to the summit, but you'll definitely be heading in the right direction. I used to teach animation, and people used to think that they would just start drawing, and then in 100 hours time they would have sort of 3 minutes of animation. But it's absolutely not like that. It's about process. You break it down, you storyboard, you write, you do little bits, you bridge them. You start to build it up bit by bit by bit. You don't just set off on the road and trudge your way along until you're worn out and forgotten what you set out for in the first place.
I think a lot of inspiration can be taken from actual industry, because I've been coming across a lot recently, things like FedEx days and 80/20 days, and I was really interested to find out that 3M, post-it notes, because literally my computer is covered in post-it notes at the moment.
Yeah.
They came up with post-it notes by having a situation and a process in place where they allowed their employees to spend 20% of their time on anything that they wanted to. And that's where post-it notes came from. And I just think, we could take some lessons in education where we look at industry and see how they're doing it so that we can start being creative and innovative.
Yeah, I definitely think so. Yeah, that's a really nice example. I was talking to somebody the other day, and we were saying how quite often it's very rigid when you're in school. I mean, one of the things that we're trying to push here at the university is for more flexible learning. So if you're splitting your day into kind of 8-hour chunks of 8 hours of work, 8 hours at home, and 8 hours of sleep, that's just perfect world here. You can actually start to swap some of those things around. You don't have to do them, one after another. And what I think, I would sort of encourage senior managers in schools to start to think about flexible working for their teachers. Really, I went to a conference. I think it was the JISC one. You'd have to forgive me. I can't remember the name of the speaker, but he talked about a survey that he did where he asked people in what space were they most productive, and people wrote lots of lovely answers like, in my conservatory or on the kitchen table or in the spare bedroom, in the box room, and that, almost. I mean, I think he interviewed about over 1,000 people, and I don't think one of them put at work, not a single. Well, I think a couple of people put at work, but what they meant was like the couple of hours in the morning before, like when they get here early and nobody else has turned up, So I think teachers need to have those spaces, and I think management needs to facilitate that for them. They need to create that time and create the space for people to be creative and support them in that. And quite often, you're stuck at school doing the paperwork, catching up. It's really hard. A lot more could be done to support teachers in that way.
So what would you say your kind of top tips would be to senior leaders as to how to support teachers better when it comes to giving them more time?
Oh, it's hard. I think, just give them a break, start trusting people a bit more. I think, what always amazed me is that, we took about sort of Grange Hill, teachers are kind of down the pub, it just doesn't happen nowadays. If teachers aren't in school, then they're at home, getting stuff ready for tomorrow. I mean, that's absolutely the reality of it. Otherwise, it's sink or swim. If you turn up, if you turn up to class and you're slightly underprepared, you get eaten up.
Oh yeah, eaten alive.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think what you have to do is you have to enable people to have a good kind of work-life balance, and that let people go out on meet other educators and talk to them. It's really interesting being in HE. We're much more encouraged to go and talk to other institutions and share practice. And I really don't feel like, when I was in FE, it felt like, don't go and talk to them down the road. They're the competition. I thought that was bonkers, really, because here we all were in our silos trying to reinvent the same wheels. And yeah, I may not have the answers, but we know as educators that the answers are out there. We just need to be asking the right questions to the right people.
I think this is one of the reasons why I created this podcast, because I think we do kind of work in our own little environments and we get so trapped in them that to try and broaden your knowledge and your experience, it's often quite difficult. So I think that was one of the drives behind the podcast, which is to share good ideas and good practice, and so that you're not reinventing the wheel, because that is just exhausting.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? And we only used to get it at kind of various meetings, and you talk to people, and somebody would show a kind of matrix, and everybody in the room would kind of slap their foreheads and go, "Oh yeah, that's great. We should be doing that," So, but I'm really interested in, I support lots of teach meets and go and kind of spread the word. That's been a real revelation to me, and I think teach meets are teachers reclaiming CPD from senior management a little bit, not just talking about the three things that Ofsted pointed out at the last report, but actually thinking about the learners and their own students and what they can do in a practical way to make tomorrow's sessions a bit more fun, a bit more engaging, and a bit more active.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more, and that's where we met at a Teach Meet, and it was just totally fabulous. But let's switch up the pace a little bit now and move on to our inspiration round. So it's an opportunity for you to give us some more of your best educational resources and add some more value to other educators. Is that okay with you?
Yeah.
What has been your proudest moment in education?
It's difficult. I remember when I was thinking about this that it's like lots of little moments. It's like confetti. It really is. It's all those little wins, and I think you should be proud of those little wins. I've seen students really get the opportunity, grasp hold of the opportunities that have been in front of them, and really do something with it. Really, when I've seen students surprise themselves, I find that really fun, rewarding, and when they show off and when they're proud. That's why I do this. I think, yeah.
Well, I don't want to overshadow your very proud moment, but it just made me think of one that I had just this week. A former pupil came back to school, and she's just finished her law degree and is thinking about becoming a teacher. And I was her business studies teacher. And I was saying, it's so wonderful to see you. And she was like, miss, I never said thank you, but I really loved your lessons. And she kept hold of the exam paper transcripts that broke down her marks and showed what her final outcome was. And she was like, I got 93% in that exam. And, I still have that paper with me today. And I was like, that's really nice, because often as teachers, you don't really see that wider impact that you're having.
No, you don't. Oh, that must have been great. You wonder about the conversations that people have at home, the things that they're learning in class. And I think having two boys of my own now, and I've got one who's at primary school, one who arrives in September, and I'm sort of now becoming more aware of the sorts of conversations that happen at home that are inspired by something that happened at school. Sometimes those wonderful inspirational moments they happen when you're not around as a teacher.
Yeah, when you don't get to see it.
Yeah, I'm afraid so. But every time I should share this somehow with back to my kid's teacher. But every time he shows me something or he talks to me about, he told me all about the Egyptians the other day and how they worshipped cats, and I sat there absolutely entranced. Okay, that's amazing, and I thought, well, your teacher would be very proud of you hearing what you're saying here. That would be very rewarding. But yeah, I think often, that's why teaching is quite selfless. Really, you set them off and they go and have their magic moments elsewhere, but you started it.
Yeah, such heartwarming moments. It's lovely. So, can you share with us the best advice you have ever received?
I think this idea of taking risks, and I hear it a lot, and I've only, I suppose, recently kind of started to think what that actually means. But you are going to try as many things. I mean, everybody's had that lesson where, I used to have 3 groups, one after another, and I used to teach the same lesson to all 3 groups. And the first time it went swimmingly, and the next time it was an absolute catastrophe, and the third time it was probably somewhere in the middle. And you think, it's amazing, but what you've got to do is kind of go with it and have fun. I used to say to my students, I'm going into battle with your comfort zones, and that was the sort of key motivator for me. And the only way I could do that was to take risks and try something. I mean, I used to teach media, so I, might show them a filmmaker or something that I knew they'd be such a long way away from, but that they might find a way of connecting, whether that be something from, I don't know, Japanese cinema or kind of French New Wave. I mean, I often never used to watch anything with subtitles, but I hopefully I won round in the end and set a few of them on the right course. Take risks, and I think you can define that for yourself.
That's fabulous. And what about your personal sources of inspiration?
Yeah, I think Twitter undoubtedly has been one of the most interesting and useful resources. I'm at that terrible stage where it's one of the first things I check in the morning and one of the last things I do at night. But whereas Twitter, when it first started off, it was all about, here I am eating a cake and here I am having a cup of tea. And now it really is about sharing something useful that you found during your day. And sometimes if I've had a look at a few things, I feel like I've been to a couple of 100 conferences that day, or I've met lots of different educators with some great ideas. There are some quite brilliant people out there.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you on that. I'm a bit addicted myself.
Yeah, it's tough.
So can you share with us a personal teaching or education habit that works for you time and again?
I understand how difficult it is for teachers to adapt their teaching and create great learning, because it's been difficult for me. I took a real journey as an educator. I definitely was a sort of, I've come from industry. I'm going to talk to you like you're sort of my apprentices, really, and I'm going to, give you all this stuff that I have. And then it started to change. I realised that I wasn't the most important person in the room, that they already contained all the right ingredients, and that together as a class we could create some good learning. So it is really difficult, and you have to give of yourself in a way that means that the class is much more important than you are. Ultimately, it was terrible. Can you imagine how I coped?
I'd like to be a fly on the wall. Do you have a resource that you can share with our listeners, internet, book or otherwise, that you think would add value to them in their daily practice?
I'm really inspired by people like Ken Robinson. I have read a couple of his books, and I love his keynotes. They're quite fun, and I'm really interested in what he's saying about creativity. That's a process, and that you can learn it and get better at it. And that it can lead to really sort of fantastic, wonderful, and unexpected things. So he's a great source of inspiration. There was a lovely quote that he said that academics just think that the body is a sort of transport device for the brain. That the two things are ultimately detached. But that he taught dance and things like that in schools, and he started to see that the body and the brain are all one thing. You've got to you've got to work on both at the same time.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. From me to you, Stefan, thank you so much for joining me on the show. It has been wonderful delving into your ideas and your thoughts, and you share some really valuable content with us. But just before we say goodbye, how can our listeners get in contact with you?
Twitter is really a great place to meet and have chats, and I will love to get into conversation with people at Twitter. So on Twitter at Dots and Spaces, but I do have a blog, and what started off as just a kind of personal blog has started to have some reflections around some of the ideas that we're doing. So that blog is dotsandspaces.typepad.com, and you're very welcome to come and have a visit. Otherwise, you can good old fashioned email me if you want, and that's stefan.caspar@sutton.ac.uk, and hopefully I'll bump into people at teach meets and online and various places, and I hope to learn as much from you as I hope I'll spark your interest as well.
Thank you for joining us today on Inspiration for Teachers. For more resources, tips and advice, visit our website, inspirationforteachers.com. If you enjoyed today's episode, we would love to connect with you. Just click like on our Facebook page at facebook.com/inspirationforteachers.